Welcome back to Today in Atlanta Sports. Today we are talking about the Hawks' chances in the play-in tournament, which begins today. Eastern Conference, you got the 7 seed playing the 8 seed in Cleveland. We can go ahead and break down that matchup a little because it is pretty important. That would be if the Hawks win against the Hornets tomorrow, that's who they're going to have to play on the road to get into the playoffs. So the Hawks have to win 2 in a row to get in. And I think we both will agree that you definitely want to play Cleveland over Brooklyn in that matchup. So you kind of want Brooklyn to take care of business at home. I don't think either of them will be easy, but Cleveland's definitely been on a slide while Brooklyn's kind of been on their way up. They got Kyrie back. They got Kevin Durant back. Brooklyn looks like a pretty solid team that if they get in the tournament, I mean, who knows? They could win the Eastern Conference, which is much firepower as they have. Having a one-game playoff against two guys like Kyrie and Kevin Durant who have been around the block in the postseason. I mean, if you look at a team where the Hawks could have an advantage, having Trae Young with all his playoff experience against a young Cavs team, I think would be a huge advantage in a winner-take-all game. Doesn't matter if it's on the road. If you play the Nets, you obviously have two guys in Kyrie and Kevin Durant who they've been around the block. You don't have any advantage there. You're going to be playing on the road. I do think the Hawks match up well with both teams. So if they do get in it doesn't really matter who wins. I do think they can win. But I'm actually really worried about this Hornets game. I think this Hornets game is equally as bad as a matchup. I think it's a huge advantage the Hawks are playing at home where they've won 19 of their last 22. But I think the matchup is tough. I mean, I actually went to the last when they played the Hornets at home, and the Hornets beat them. A lot of young talent, a lot of explosive players, a lot of guys can go off. Miles Bridges has really come into his own. LaMelo Ball is one of the bright young stars in the game. Terry Rozier is averaging 20 points a game. You wouldn't even know it. Gordon Hayward's out for this one, but another really solid player. Kelly Oubre can go off. PJ Washington, Montrezl Harrell, a lot of talent on this team. So I don't think this is a pushover at all. The Hawks are going to have to win 2 tough games, but hey, this was what it's all about. And when you have a guy like Trae Young, you have to feel pretty confident about the team at least playing pretty well in these 2 games.
Yeah, circling back to the Nets Cavs, I think I've seen it anywhere from 8 to 9 point favorites for the Nets. So at least Vegas thinks the Nets will move on. So if the Hawks do win against the Hornets, it'll probably be against the Cavs, who are without Jared Allen still, which is, that would be like us missing Clint Capella, which would be horrible. So that's not good for them. Ben Simmons, I think, is questionable, but I don't think he's going to play. But yeah, I think the Charlotte game is more difficult than the Cleveland game could be. Unfortunately, just like you said, the Hornets are deep, and they're a sneaky deep team. They like to play fast, just like the Hawks. The Hawks have to, the Hawks don't want to play slow by any means. They want to get out in transition, but they do have to play at their own pace. And I'm more worried about the Hornets than the Cavs would be, honestly, and not the Nets, obviously, because KD and Kyrie can combine for 80 on any given night. So yeah, all eyes will be on Trae Young. He's our superstar. He lives for these moments. I wouldn't be surprised if he dropped something like 40 and 10, 40 and 11, something like that.
Yeah, I would actually.
But it's going to rest on his shoulders.
I would actually be surprised if he didn't, if I'm being honest. I think there's a better chance of him dropping 30-plus points, 10-plus assists than there is of him not doing it. I'm interested to see what the rotations are like. If you ask me, I think you got to give Trae 40-plus minutes in this game. I'm not, it's a winner-take-all game. It's the last game of the season, potentially. I don't need to see him sitting out 6 minutes between the third and fourth quarter like Nate's done all season. I don't give a shit what the rotations were like. So that'll be something that I'm very interested to see in this game. I think he better play 40-plus minutes. And I would be shocked if he didn't have 30-plus in this game. Nobody on the Hornets can check him. There just isn't anyone in the NBA that can check him. I mean, he'd have to have a very bad game for him not to go off in this one. It's really a question about who's going to step up besides him. To me, if you ask me, I think it's going to be Bogey. He's been on fire down the stretch. I think Gallinari's played really well down the stretch. I look for those two guys to really kind of be, especially as veterans that have been in this position before. I think those are the two guys that I'm most confident in offensively. I think Kevin Herter too. We obviously seen him go off in games and big games. He's a guy to watch out for. But those three guys really need to play well. I hate to say that I don't really expect DeAndre Hunter to do much offensively. I don't expect him to get many plays called for him. I did like the way he attacked the basket at the end of the season, but I think you're going to look for Bogey, Gallinari, Herter, and really just stretch the floor out. Let Trae Young work with Clint Capella in the pick and roll, and I think that's going to be the game plan in this one.
Yeah, I've seen some stuff about Lou maybe coming off the bench. He hasn't been playing much recently, but nobody's played more games and more playoff games on this team than Lou has, and he can give you 15 real easy off the bench. He's sweet like that. I think that for the Hawks to win this game, you're going to have 6, 7 guys in double-digit points, which includes DeAndre Hunter. And just like you mentioned, he's been, I mean, as of recently, he's been a little bit better, but in the past, like 20 games, he's been god awful. But when he gets aggressive and deliberate and he goes to the basket, that's when he's at his best, not, settling for jump shots. But his defense has also been, he's left a lot to be desired. So it's not only on the offensive end, but he's also got to step up on the defensive end. He's one of our best wings, which is, pretty bad at this point if he's playing this bad. But I agree, it's Bogey. He's been averaging 25 in the past, such and such games. He might have to have over that because this is going to be a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Bogey and Trae are probably. I mean, Bogey comes off the bench these days. I almost wish he was starting, but whatever. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I like staggering those two guys on the floor, anyways. So it doesn't really hurt me. I think you can do that with him starting, but they play enough on the floor. Bogey and Trae to me are two, like when they're on the floor together, two of the best. I mean, that's like a poor man. I wouldn't even say poor man's. I would say that is like Steph and Clay. I don't really think there's much difference when Bogey's playing like this. I mean, especially since Klay Thompson isn't what he used to be. And I think Trae Young is just as good, if not better, than Steph Curry at this point in his career. So those two, that's a tough backcourt to guard, especially when they get hot. I really think that's what it's going to come down to. If those two can play well today, I don't think the Hornets have much of a shot. One thing I'm interested to see, I mean, now that it is playoff time, the Hawks have played a lot better defensive basketball down the stretch here, which is why they've won a lot more games than they've lost. And even when they lose, it's been, close game because it's basically been playoff basketball for them for a couple of weeks. I'm interested to see how this, the tempo and everything shakes out. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if this was a game that ended up like 98-95. Like, everyone just expects, because you watch these teams in the regular season, it's like 120 to 125. But then, this is a playoff game. This is a winner-take-all game. The defense is going to be at a high level. The intensity should be there from the opening tip by both teams. And I think both teams genuinely believe that not only that they can win this game, I think they believe they can win the next game. And I think they both believe they can give the Heat a run for their money. So, in a lot of these games, they might not think, who really gives a shit if we win this game? We're not doing anything. But I think the Hawks definitely think they can give a Heat a run for their money. I think the Hornets can do too. So I think there's a lot. I think there's going to be a very high intensity game from the opening tip with two teams that, even though they're the 9 and 10 seed, believe they can go into the Eastern Conference and win a series or two.
Yeah, Vegas has it somewhere between 4 and 5, depending on the outlet you're looking at. The Hawks are favored, so at least Vegas believes the Hawks should win this. But that's an interesting point about it being a relatively low-scoring game. I think the over/under was like 235 or something like that. So I wouldn't necessarily be surprised because you'll have those jitters. Everybody's trying to push it. Everybody's trying to, give all they have. And, when you don't play loose, you play a little sloppy sometimes. So I wouldn't be necessarily surprised if it's a low scoring affair.
Well, I mean, I think if you look across the board in playoff games, particularly winner take all games, and whether it's college basketball, pro, even, football, winner take all games, they're genuinely more low scoring, especially in basketball. You go look at, just go look at like game sevens of like the Philly game last year. It was like 92 to 89. Like these games, they're like, typically, especially during the regular season, 115, 120, people are not really playing defense, but you put a winner take all matchup. I mean, I don't even really bet that much anymore, but I love the under in that. Like I would be shocked if it went over that number. It doesn't matter what they did in the regular season because the intensity is going to be up. And I think, both teams are going to play very, very hard defensively. And I think both teams, like I said, believe they can win a series in the Eastern Conference Finals. So they want to win this game badly. You look at a team like Charlotte, they haven't really been here before. So this is an exciting moment for them. You look at a team like the Hawks; they believe they can beat Miami. They probably believe that they can get in. They can make some noise, especially if John Collins get healthy. I mean, why wouldn't they? They did last year. So it's all about getting in. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think it's going to be super, super high intensity. I think it's going to be a really fun game. I think it's going to be close, and I think it's going to come down to some Trae Young magic. I really do.
Yeah, speaking of JC, Schlink said this morning that his foot is fine, the plantar fasciitis, but he's still shooting with a splint on his finger, trying to get comfortable with that. So I wouldn't expect him to play. I don't think anybody is.
No.
But the potential is there to get him back if they get into the playoffs. So that would be, a monumental addition to
Yeah.
have JC back in any capacity, regardless if he can't shoot or not. He's still valuable on the defensive end. He's valuable on the boards. He could still, a little finger isn't going to stop a Trae Young alley-oop. I doubt it. So that addition would be huge.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you get into the playoffs, getting him back would be huge. Right now, I wouldn't even want him back for a one game. I wouldn't want him feeling himself out there in a one game plan. So yeah, if you can get back him into the lineup in a week or two, or 10 days, whenever that first round series starts, yeah, I would love that. But right now, one game plans. I think especially the way Gallo's playing, I would much rather him out there. So I'm excited. I'm excited. It's kind of nerve wracking because it's winner take all. But I mean, it always seems like Trae Young steps up in these scenarios, and I trust in him. So I hope they can get out of this. I'd love to see them in the playoffs because I really think they could make some noise and at least give the Heat a competitive matchup. And I think they played well enough at the end of the season to be deserving to be in. They really just finished a game behind, the frickin' Cavs and the Nets. I mean, so they missed out on that 7-8 game, which is disappointing. And now they're gonna have to win two in a row, do it the hard way. But they played well enough down the stretch to win two in a row. And if they can get past Charlotte at home, which I think they should, if they get Cleveland on the road, I think they got a great chance of doing it. So let's get after it. Let's hope for the best.